As the holidays approach, it seems like Meta's on a game releasing spree with about 10 titles dropping this month alone. And just as we're catching our breath, Asgard's Wrath 2 by Casandchary Games slides in, launching on December 15 for $60 US. And it's not just any game, it's an epic action-adventure RPG and the most massive quest game to date. Over 60 hours of story, 40 plus hours of side quests, minigames and replayable content, which is over 100 hours of gameplay. It is the longest narrative-driven VR game on Quest, but it's not without its flaws. Some parts felt repetitive and grindy, but if you're into ancient Egypt and mythical gods, plus love a good mix of exploration, puzzles, combat and so much more, I think there is a world of fun waiting for you. Today I'm here to dissect Asgard's Wrath 2, the good, the not so good, and whether it's worth your money. Quick heads up, this is a Quest exclusive sequel optimized for Quest 2, and I've been mainly playing on Quest 3. And for those new to the series, don't worry if you missed the first game, there is a handy recap of the story at the start of Asgard's Wrath. You should know that if you're a PC VR player, there is an added bonus for pre-ordering this sequel, because you get the first game free. So if you're planning to play it, maybe save this video for later, as I will be touching on its storyline. Don't worry too much about spoilers for Asgard's Wrath 2, because the game is so massive that I'll only scratch the surface in this review. I'll only talk about the most important mechanic. Plus the gameplay featured in this video will primarily focus on the early stages of the game. So it shouldn't spoil the story. Now, even so, this is going to be a packed one, so grab a drink and join me beyond reality. So in Asgard's Wrath 2, we pick up right after the dramatic ending of the first game. We're not just revisiting Norse mythology, but we're venturing into the ancient Egyptian universe. In the first game, you were a fledgling god, and Loki, the trickster god, was pretending to help and train us. In the end, it was revealed that the tavern we were in was his prison, created to punish him for orchestrating the murder of Odin's son, Baldur. So after the final battle, Loki stole the sixth stone from the fledgling god and escaped. Loki was gone, only leaving a mysterious artifact, an Ankh. This is where the second game starts. You'll soon encounter the Weavers, three giant mysterious women who blame you for Loki's disappearance, and demand that you find him before he wreaks havoc upon all existence.
You have transcended. Let us weave you.
It becomes clear that you're not just a fledgling god, but a cosmic guardian responsible for the balance of the entire universe. Talk about a job promotion, right? Now, just like in the first game, you have this unique ability to possess mortals, and you're not just sticking to one character, you're hopping into the shoes, or sandals I guess, of 4 different mortals. Each comes with her distinct weapons, abilities, and skill trees. First up is Abraxas, a Tomb Raider. This guy's all about getting up close and personal with the enemies, with magical bonuses for blocking and parrying. Then there's Cyrene, who's your go-to for ranged attacks and area of effect spells. We also meet Avilda, an elven ranger who's awesome with a bow and arrow. And lastly, there's this unique mortal that wields a necromantic staff that can do strong crowd control. Each mortal fuses with your divine energy, so not only can they do these basic attacks, but you can combine it with impressive magic, which is what makes the combat very interesting. I'll talk more about this in a bit, but because of this, each mortal offers a different gameplay experience, and the transitions between them keep the game fresh and engaging. In Asgard's Wrath 2, the epic tale unfolds across 7 sagas. This means you won't spend equal time with all characters. However, with an endless dungeon and endgame content, there's plenty of opportunity to explore each one further. I'll talk more about this in a bit. But you will find that the second and third sagas are the most extensive, putting you in the sandals of Abraxas and Cyrene for a significant chunk of your journey. But your adventure isn't limited to mortal possession. You also have a godly form, which is accessible at these god altars. You have to activate them first, then hold the Y button, and voila, you're a towering deity. Perfect for solving the game's huge environmental puzzles. These puzzles are a highlight for me. They're visually impressive and offers a great variety. For instance, one puzzle I encountered had me balancing skills using jars of different weights, and another one had me tracing constellations with the rule that lines between the nodes could not be retraced. These are just glimpses of the variation you encounter. What really sets these puzzles apart in this game is the collaboration between your godly and mortal forms. It's a mechanic that VR enhances wonderfully, adding a sense of the massive skill of this game. Now, each new area, especially when introduced to a new god puzzle, feels fresh and exciting, but as you delve deeper in one area, there are repeating puzzle mechanics across the levels, and after like level 3, it can start to feel repetitive. I was missing some more variety and pacing here. This could make or break the game for you because completing these puzzles isn't just for fun, they're important to advancing the main quest, so you better enjoy doing these puzzles. Now, I'm actually someone who doesn't usually gravitate towards puzzle games. I don't play them a lot, and even I found these puzzles not overly complex. Often just looking around closely hints at the solution, but it did not break the game for me. I thought it was engaging enough for me at least.
I waited to see if you would return.
The game really begins after the first saga, because the world opens up. You find yourself in a vast desert landscape. It's the first area that has opportunities for exploration, from hidden caves to random enemy spawns and events. Honestly, I haven't had time to spend much doing these side quests yet, but you get the freedom to explore, which adds an open world feel to the game. Of course, the quest hardware does limit this, and there are invisible walls, so it's not as big as it looks, but there just aren't many quest games like this. And as you progress, you'll even be able to do a variety of side quests and mini-games like fishing. This is where I found myself sidetracked for a couple of hours in the endless dungeon, collecting loot for side quests. Looking back, I should probably have stuck to the main story initially, especially since it leads to unlocking your first animal follower. These followers are a major game mechanic and quickly became one of my favorite features. There are 5 unique followers in the game, each capable of transforming into a human warrior companion with special abilities or back into their animal form with other special abilities. For instance, Subira, the first follower, is a panther that you can mount. In her human form, she has the power to shadow shift stones. The other followers have distinct abilities, like there is a falcon who can fly, so these abilities can be really different. And they each have their own personalities, and you bond with them over time. They can chat.
My princess, do you believe she ever saw me as more than a toy or pet?
Ask for high fives after a battle win or a fist bump because they're cheering you on, and gradually, if you interact with them, they become friendlier. This bonding aspects made me smile all the time and added a delightful touch to my experience, making the journey less solitary as well. So once I bonded with Subira, I took every chance to travel mounted because that sped up traversing the desert landscapes. The game presents 8 realms to explore, each with its distinct style inspired by Egyptian mythology. The architecture, from giant buildings to mystical artifacts, is at times so visually stunning that it just dropped my mouth. The first thing I noticed about the game is that it excels, especially in audio. It has fantastic music and sound effects, and the use of the spatial audio for whispers and otherworldly sounds is particularly immersive and sometimes chillingly realistic.
The natural disorder.
Loki's order.
Now, your central hub is the Great Hall of the Sun. This is filled with lively NPCs in the shops and armory, which unlock over time. You can walk to most places, but to navigate, I think you'll find yourself using the menu a lot. There's a map with fast travel points that you can unlock as you explore. Once you enter an area, there is a compass available that acts like a minimap guidance. In the open world maps, you can traverse while mounted, but there are some more linear maps or areas where you can only walk, and then your divine powers allows your mortal to do some dynamic movements like wall running, sliding, and swinging. Most of the time you only have to press a button for it and then it will go automatically, but it's very fluid. And sometimes you have to use like some kind of gesture to navigate, and especially when you can hold this momentum and combining different movements, I feel like that the navigation to the ancient Egyptian architecture is exhilarating. I enjoyed navigating Asgard's Wrath too, but I did wish it rewarded me more for exploring. The areas have a lot of breakable items like pots and dead scorpions, alongside harvestable resources like flowers, fruit and ores. You need this for crafting upgraded weapons and armor, potions and traps for you and your followers. Unfortunately, crafting is done with just a press of a button. I kinda wish that they made this a bit more interactive. And initially I was breaking everything in sight, hoping to maximize loot from each run. However, it didn't always drop something, which eventually made this approach feel a lot less rewarding. The chests scattered around, especially the ones with different colors, were a different story. They could contain valuable gems for enhancing the stats of your armor and weapons, making them more worthwhile to seek out. The inventory system in Asgard's Wrath 2 remains consistent with the first game. It's a full screen menu that pauses the game when opened. This feature might not be everyone's cup of tea because it could take you out of the immersion, but personally I appreciate it. It's been a lifesaver during intense battles, giving me a moment to catch my breath and heal up. Otherwise, for quicker access, there is also a handy quick slot menu activated simply by pressing the left controller stick. So jumping into combat in Asgard's Wrath 2, expect a whirlwind of action. Battles can be chaotic, with waves of enemies and lots of visual cues. They're also heavily quick time events oriented. But what really spices things up is the diversity in weapons and the combo possibilities. As you level up, skill points can be invested in weapon abilities. The awesome thing is that your gameplay may vary because you can adapt the build to your playstyle. And each mortal comes with their unique abilities, their own skill tree and weapons that offer even more variety. For instance, let's take the first mortal. You start with a sword and axe, later unlocking a shield. The axe is my personal favorite as it can be thrown and recalled. And I just noticed that I was using that a lot, so I focused on my build on that axe, and at some point I unlocked a skill that creates a whirlwind of blades, and it just made me feel very powerful early game. The sword can eventually transform into a whip, which allows for some creative combos, like you can put your shield down and then use your whip, and you can turn your shield into a saw blade that can bounce between enemies. This variety in combos keeps combat fresh. Although it is not as physics heavy as games like Blade and Sorcery, it might feel bland compared to that game as you don't really feel the impact swinging weapons. I do like the finishers, they are satisfying. Think Mortal Kombat style, decapitation, dismemberments and even slicing enemies in half or whatever direction you want. However, the reliance on quick time events and repetitive enemy types can make combat feel a bit stale, especially after a few hours. Asgard's Wrath 2 does ramp up the challenge eventually. New enemy types are introduced in new sagas, plus I met some tough bosses requiring specific strategies. And then there are these cinematic boss fights, especially against those towering god bosses. They are a highlight, demanding more than just spamming your favorite skill. The good news is that while the combat has its repetitive moments, I don't think they tank the game. The cinematic battles and the rush of defeating towering god bosses really capture that exhilarating feeling of being an awesome, powerful hero. It's these moments that you kind of live to, and it's where Asgard's Wrath 2 truly shines. Now I think I covered most of the major important mechanics, but there is more. I told you there is a lot to this game. Let's start with Asynchronous multiplayer. You can customize your Cosmic Guardian avatar, and you can use an item to place it almost anywhere in the world for others to see in their games. And occasionally you'll encounter the soul of a fallen player. They can either challenge you in battle or assist as a companion. It kinda reminds me of Elden Ring, although in Asgard's Wrath, these players become AI companions, not real-time allies as is possible in Elden Ring. I was kinda hoping it was possible in this game. Now this feature doesn't really impact the game in any major way, but seeing others in my world made me want to leave my mark too, so keep an eye out. You might stumble upon my avatar, which should either be called Cassie or Cass. Let me know if you spot me. There are also cosmic events, which are monthly challenges with rotating objectives that reward players with points and ultimately special prizes. It adds a community dimension to the game, adding more replayability, but I can't tell you yet if this truly keeps you coming back because the cosmic event hasn't ended for me yet. Then one of the last things is the Uncharted Rifts. This is a roguelite endless dungeon in the in-between. Accessible by talking to someone I suspect might be a wink to a dungeon master. These rifts are fun for skill sharpening and collecting loot as you can send them back to your main game, or maybe you want to get on the high score. And there is an extra incentive to dive in daily because there are daily rewards for it. I haven't spent much time on cosmic events or Uncharted Rifts yet, so I'm reserving judgment for now, but they do seem like a solid addition for replayability. While Chary Games has done a remarkable job pushing the limits of mobile VR hardware with Asgard's Wrath 2, it is clear that the game's ambitions are restrained by the hardware's capabilities. In my playthrough on the Quest 3, I encountered occasional frame drops and stuttering. I also encountered some bugs where I wasn't able to pick something up or something didn't respawn. Thankfully, these were not game-breaking and a restart of the game usually works. But don't expect graphical improvements on the Quest 3. The developers have stated they're not currently planning Quest 3 enhancements, focusing instead on a smooth release. This feels a bit sad for Quest 3 owners, so I'm holding out hope for future updates. But most of the time, Chary Games did an incredible job with this game. I gotta say though, I haven't been able to complete the game. I'm very sorry everyone, I really tried, but I just ran out of time. However, I am about 20 hours in and I'm still in Saga 3, so while I can't give this a final review, I feel I've seen enough to offer a well-considered recommendation. Asgard's Wrath 2 stands out on the Quest store with its unparalleled depth and variety. It is truly the longest narrative-driven VR game, and I just loved the story, the beautiful cinematic scenes, the unique followers mechanic, the stunning environments, the god-skill puzzles that really gives you that sense of skill in this game, and also the diverse skill combos. Yes, it's not without its flaws, like the occasional repetition, but the game smartly introduces new mortals and abilities, sometimes a little bit too late, but most of the time just when you need a change of pace. But I think this will depend on your tolerance for the RPG grind and your interest in ancient Egypt themed fantasy stories. If you're after physics heavy combat, this might not be the game for you. However, for those who enjoy puzzles and love exploring a developer's unique vision of a universe, I think Asgard's Wrath 2 is absolutely worth the investment. It's quickly climbed to the top of my all-time favorites list. But let me know what you think. Are you planning to grab Asgard's Wrath 2 day one, or do these fantasy tales not really float your boat? I would love to hear your thoughts. Now, creating reviews, especially for a game as big as this one, takes a tremendous amount of time. So if this review helped you in any way, please show some love with a like and consider subscribing for more. Your support really makes a difference.